Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 371 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ayalon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Our third book is called From Letters to Leaders, Leveraging Your Fraternity or Sorority Experience to Land Your Dream Job. So go and pick up that book on Amazon today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring college students together. Fun fact, when I was treasurer of my fraternity chapter in college, the fraternity brothers would bring me all kinds of things that they wanted me to spend chapter funds on, but none of it was in line with our budget. I actually had a sign printed up that said no in my room that I could point to whenever they came around looking for money. While that was really hard, given the fact that we're all really wired to be well-liked, it was the right thing to do in order to ensure that we met our collective goals as an organization. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that today. In the meantime, let me introduce you to our next guest. Kim DeYoung is a seasoned consultant, a choice coach, an entrepreneur with a strong background in online marketing and retail merchandising with a proven track record of driving business growth through strategic thinking and meticulous implementation. As a choice coach, Kim specializes in supporting thought leaders, coaches, authors, and teachers who have a powerful message to share with the world. She guides individuals in translating their brilliance from their minds to tangible creations, such as books, courses, and impactful talks. Kim's unique ability to extract and make sense of her clients' brilliance empowers them to turn their ideas into reality. Welcome to the show, Kim.
Thank you. So glad to be here with you.
Hey, it is our pleasure. You have so much great information to share with our college students today. So I am super excited. I can't wait to dive in. And you know what? You actually went to one of my favorite campuses in the country. You decided on the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, of course, for your undergraduate experience. So our audience listeners, they want to know, why did you decide on Michigan?
Well, I have a funny story about Michigan, which is it was not originally my choice from that perspective. It was the safety, which back in the day, Michigan was a safety. Today, it certainly is not. Yeah. And to me, I'm a girl who grew up in New York, and what am I doing going to some school in the Midwest where people point to their hand to tell you where they live? But in truth, it was the best decision I have ever made. I mean, that school, the experience, the friendships transformed my life. And it actually became an important point of conversation as my kids were applying. I said, you know what, like, we could all land in many schools in our life. And the minute you meet your first friend, take your first interesting class, like, you're good. You're fine. And the truth was, I made the most of Michigan, and my most cherished friendships are from Michigan, and it was a wonderful place to have landed.
That's fantastic. It is a great institution, and the students are extremely bright. There's no question about it. I've worked with many of them over the years. And yeah, as somebody who grew up in the New York City area, I have no idea how you ended up in Michigan. No clue. Like,
where do I?
That's just not like one of the options that they were giving us in New York. Like,
now it is, then it wasn't. It was not the norm.
Then it definitely wasn't.
Yes.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about choices, because I think you are the expert when it comes to that. I think today's students, in a certain sense, I think that they have this fear of making the wrong choices, okay? So many of the students that I'm working with, they're afraid to fail, quite honestly, and it almost paralyzes them. How can they get over that just sense of, I'm afraid to fail?
I mean, there is no doubt that is the biggest fear, not only of students, but of the world at large. It is that fear. And now you take someone young who does not have a lot of experience, who, you know, it's one thing to be in your 50s, 60s, making a choice you have the breath to look back on. But as somebody new in their late teens and 20s, stepping out to make a choice, it's scary. Is that job going to be the thing? Is that program that I'm doing, that major that I'm doing. Like everything has such weight because they have a short vista of years to look upon. And the truth is, and we can say this to them as adults, and it doesn't always land. Like, we also know that our greatest gifts came from our biggest mistakes. I mean, if you really think, where did you grow in your life? It's from the things that you did wrong that you had to figure out. And you know what the truth is? I'm just a big believer that no choice is a wrong choice. Every choice is an opportunity for it to be a lesson. And when it comes to making a choice, and I had a beautiful mentor who said this to me in one of my early jobs in my early 20s. He's like, all you can do in any day is make the best choice with who you are today. And then tomorrow you will use that information for your next choice. And the truth is, you just have to begin somewhere. And it's not easy. I'm not saying that fear of making the mistake and the pressure that, you know, the external world puts on us is not real. Of course it is. But to take a deep breath, like, it's just one of many choices. Typically, you can always course correct as well. Like, rarely is a choice so set in stone. You choose a college. If you hate it, you transfer. You choose a job. You hate it, you quit. I mean, like, there are options. Like, we're not so set in stone. But yet I do have the sensitivity to the fear, but somehow pushing forth, knowing that there's a bigger world out there, and that honestly, what's the bigger issue is the paralysis and the indecision and not moving forth. And, you know, there's something that happens magically with the momentum when a kid finally makes that choice and, okay, I see what's going on. You know, they see the lay of the land. So that's really key.
Yeah, I try to push students into making a choice, and that's all we can do is just make choices with the information that we have at the time. And
Yeah.
you know what, a week later, a month later, maybe we have more information and we look back on it and we say, you know, I wish I had a redo. That happens to all of us. Ultimately, we all learn from those mistakes, and that's how we grow, to your point. And I think you had a great mentor that really was able to kind of formulate that in your mind and help you to make some decisions. Now, you know, let's talk a little bit about values, because I think students come into college and they will have values perhaps from their parents, perhaps from a teacher or a professor, perhaps from their religion. These are all places where we can get values. So how can the students themselves, how can they clarify what their personal values are?
That is such a great question. I think the truth is, you know, obviously you're right. They've had a lot of external stimulation coming in, and now it is for them to self-reflect. Like, do those voices from my parents, from whomever, do they ring true for me? This is where they have to like tap into their own gut and what feels right. And a lot of that stems from, you know, college is a time of experimentation. You know, they're going to try new activities, new friendships, new courses, new things. And this really is a time for them to ground into like, what feels good? I'm actually navigating this with my third child, is in college at the moment. And I said to him when he left, I said, you know, your job will be to find things that you want to say yes to, that speak to you. You know, you've got a lot of noise coming in, but like, what feels good to you? So, you know, my real best advice for any student would be to begin to notice that gut, because that is going to travel with them through the rest of their life. And the earlier that they can begin to ground into themselves, like, there's always going to be the noise of external voice, etc. And you have to take it in. You have to put it through your own filter. And of course, this becomes easier with age, but this is when they begin. This is the beginning of that journey for them.
Yeah, I love hearing about those conversations with your son. I think that's really important. You know, for the students who are listening, just think about, when were you most proud in your life? Think about, you know, what were you doing? Who was surrounding you, right? Those are the types of questions that will help you, I think, lead you in the right direction. And those things are going to change over time. So I think it's the type of thing that you really want to reflect on often, to help guide you in terms of what it is you should be doing with your life. So I hope that helps you. Now, the other thing that I think about too is making unpopular choices because I think we're all hardwired. We all want to be well liked. Me, you, everybody who is a human, we all want to be well liked. That is common. But sometimes you are going to have to make unpopular choices, especially when you're in a leadership position. So, I guess that is, my question is how can students make those unpopular choices even though they want to be well liked?
That is a hard place to be for the student. And again, they are setting the groundwork for who they are as they step more into the adult world. And, again, you're talking about it from a leadership role, but talk about the unpopular choice of doing something against the grain of what their parents might have wanted for them. I mean, I can speak to a particular thing. I remember coming into college with my father, I was the economics major. That's what I should be. And I made the unpopular choice in his eyes to add art history to my major. I mean, that was just crazy in his mind. And what that required was a deep sense of strength and confidence in myself. Number one, trusting what it was that I believed right for me, again, back to the grounding in, but secondarily, like being willing to hold my own against a strong force in my life. So whether it's a parent, whether it's a leadership organization, a professor, it takes, again, owning, like, why does this choice that you want for yourself that may be unpopular for others, why does it matter to you? And if you're very grounded in that, now it's like, okay, you got to stand up, puff your chest up a bit, but how am I going to hold my own against those who don't agree? And, you may not have the communication skills, like you're new to this, but it's the beginning again of a journey. Like what I view as so important about college is you're setting the seeds for who you are becoming as an adult, as you move forth into the world. And are you going to make mistakes? Of course, and many of them. And, but think about how important it will feel for you as the student, knowing like you're holding your ground, like you are doing something that matters to you, regardless of what others believe, be it your organization, your family, whomever, that you are taking a stand for you. That is so key. So key.
I like that. I like that a lot. The other thing that I think about with today's college students, and I'm sure you see it, with your son as well, is they have this thing that's called FOMO, this fear of missing out. And I think a lot of it has come from social media. They're constantly seeing their friends, and their friends are on vacation or doing things or having things that maybe they don't have. So they're always kind of, peering over the fence to see, is the grass greener on the other side of the fence? Maybe I should be on some other track that I'm not on right now. And they're constantly questioning, and am I on the right path? So I guess, maybe for your son who's in college, other college students right now, how can students take ownership of their future?
I gave my son good advice when he went into school, and I shared a bit of that. It was like, find your things to say yes to. Find what's interesting to you. Most kids coming into college probably don't have a clue of what they like. There will be those lucky few who know, like, I'm the med student, I'm the lawyer, like they know where they're going. Okay, that is not the bulk of kids.
No.
They come in quite young, quite clueless. And the truth is, it is up to them to put themselves out there to find what turns them on, what's interesting for them, where do they want to say yes, what is the activity? And in so doing, they are setting the step for taking control of their future. It might be a class that they've chosen to take, and all of a sudden they love the teacher. They're fascinated with something. They want to go down a route. And it's hard though. It might require doing something uncomfortable, going to the teacher. They've never done that. They're nervous about that. And they say, I'm kind of interested. How could I take this information deeper? That's an example. Maybe they've got an activity that they're interested in, something a friend's doing, something that they've found that feels interesting, and maybe they're doing it and their friends aren't doing it. And that feels weird, but for them to take ownership, to say, I like this. I want this. I'm going to invest time in this. Again, I'm watching my son. He discovered rock climbing when he got to college. And that has become this thing where he is taking ownership of that, and it's become his friend group. And will it be something he does in adulthood? I don't know. Will it be something that leads to something professional? I don't know. But right now he's happy and he's taking ownership of where he's going. And I think it's very important for students to look for that thing that feels interesting for them, and then go further. Then take it another step deeper. I think that's the key. Don't stay on the surface. If this thing turned you on and was interesting, see how you can go more, learn more, do more with other people, because you're also going to find your tribe. In my son rock climbing, he met a whole bunch of other people who like what he likes, so now he's got those people. And that's so important in your early years. And actually always to have a tribe of people who get you and can support you. And from there, you may see other paths that are interesting because you were on a path with like-minded people.
I like that idea about going deeper. I think that's really, really important. Malcolm Gladwell talks about 10,000 hours. And I think if you pursue that, then you're going to achieve something really great. So also pay attention to what you're really good at. I mean, if your son is really good at rock climbing and you just discovered that, okay, go deeper, 10,000 hours, right? Yeah. I mean, maybe that turns into something, or like you said, maybe it's a relationship with somebody who is, belay, down at the bottom, getting him up to the top of this mountain that he's trying to climb, that ultimately turns into some business idea of some new product or new service or who knows what. And that kind of brings me to the next question, because you have this background as a phenomenal marketer, you're a launch expert, and a lot of the students that I'm working with today, they really do have that entrepreneurial mindset. They have these ideas in their head in terms of some new product or some new service that they want to bring to market. So what is your advice to them if they don't even know where to begin with this new entrepreneurial venture?
Yes. Oh my goodness. I think entrepreneurship is one of the most exciting things for the youth. And I think the opportunities for them are probably just growing with all of the technology and things, et cetera. Yet, with all of the technology and things, et cetera, it is a very overwhelming world to step into, and it can feel really scary. And you're looking at other people and you talk about FOMO, and it's like, how did they do it? How did they figure out? What do they know? Are they smarter? Do they have more money? And, they make up stories in their heads about how did these other people do it? And do I have the chops to do it? I would say at the very simplest, start small. Take your idea, figure out some small way. My biggest advice is do not spend a lot of money on your idea. And I say that from experience. I took way too much savings back in the day in something, and I wish I would have bootstrapped. I really wish I would have bootstrapped. And I would advise that of anybody. Like, figure out how to do something, figure out how many hours you have to commit to it, how much money you're willing to invest, et cetera, ideally low, but and reach out to everybody that you can talk to. I mean, there are so many great mentors out there, whether you're going to score, retired people who want to support young people, whether you're reaching out to your parents' friends, to a professor you've connected with, to a big brother type. People love to help. And I know for myself as an entrepreneur, I am actually supporting some of my other son's friends who are a little bit out of college. And I am thrilled to give them advice, thrilled to share wisdom and, all of that. And I think for somebody young starting out, it can be scary to ask the questions, but to put themselves in that situation, to step in a little bit vulnerably. But also, and of course, you want to have a plan. You want to have thought it out as best you can. But start small, take steps, have conversations, put yourself out there. Don't spend a ton of money, and see if there's traction. And the truth is, along the journey, you're going to learn so many things. And again, you're going to make so many mistakes, and it's all good. And all of that supports you as you move along.
Mm-hmm. Bootstrapping is a great advice there because I've been doing it my whole career. I've never really had access to large amounts of funds, but ultimately what that does is now you're proving that in this case study that it actually works, this business model. And maybe it's just a side hustle that you start in college that turns into something much bigger. And, for me, it was a web design and search engine optimization company that I just did as a hobby, just starting really small. And then before you know it, all of a sudden all these checks started appearing out of nowhere, and now I'm making more money at nights and on the weekend than I was in my day job as a CFO in Manhattan. So so those things actually happen. And so I agree with you, start small, build it over time, and then you're going to know when it's the right time to take the leap and then jump with both feet in. Like,
Yeah.
you'll know when that time comes. So I like that. The other thing is, I've been reading your book. It's called The Book of Choice. I really like it. And in there, you talk about something called choice mapping. Tell our audience, what is choice mapping and why do you feel it's so important?
Choice mapping is a tool that I developed a little bit by mistake, but it did happen. And choice mapping is a tool that anybody can use to make sense of the details of a choice. So, again, there are a lot of things to think about when you're stepping into making a choice. And at the moment, I'm talking about the choices that matter, not what you're eating and what you're wearing. And so when you're trying to assess, why does that choice matter? What am I nervous about? What's possible? What actions am I going to take? A choice map gives you a place to capture the Q&A that you've had with yourself so that on one piece of paper, you can really take in all of the details of that choice. And I'll tell you, one of the things I really, really love about choice mapping is that when you've now crafted this document and you've spent a bit of time thinking about the Q&A to all the things I've just mentioned, you can now go back to it at any period, a month into your choice, 6 months in, a year in, whether you're happy or not happy, and say, does this still work for me? Do these words that I captured resonate? Is the choice that I made, does it feel good? Do I need to course correct? It gives you a point in time for you to go back and look. I describe it as a choice map is a way to capture your truth at a moment in time. And it's very, very powerful.
Yeah, this is a great tool for college students for sure. Go and pick up that book. It's called The Book of Choice. I think you're really, really going to like it. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about is just relationships, whether that be in college or in life. This is a difficult thing, okay? Relationships aren't necessarily easy. There's a lot of give and take here. But let's assume that we're in college and things are just not working out in some dating scenario. Do you believe, and this happens a lot when I'm talking to college students, should we just ghost the other person and then just move on?
I guess I'll answer that question with a question for the student to consider, which is, who's the person that they want to be? Like this at the root of this is kind of a bigger question. Here you are, a 20-year-old kid, you're dating someone, you're not into them. Do you want to be the person who just goes away? Or do you want to learn to be the person who learns how to have uncomfortable conversations and say, you know what? Thank you for this time that we've had together. It's just not working. We're not connected. I'm not feeling it. I mean, it's not an easy conversation. I'm not saying it's a pretty thing to do, but being that person is a very different person than the person who sneaks out the door. So this is where you as a human have an opportunity to say, how do I want to show up in that moment? Like, who do I want to be? Because how you do anything is how you do everything. And is ghosting the person that you want to be? I mean, again, imagine what it would feel for you if it were done to you in the reverse. So I think, and this conversation to have internally of how do I want to show up as I make difficult things. And of course, in your college years, you probably don't have a ton of experience at communicating at that level. And it is something that you will improve upon as you go. And there's no doubt the conversation to have is not going to be a pleasant one, but it is one worth having and one which you will get stronger at having as you do it more frequently.
Yeah, I think part of the problem, I think, is social media. I think, the way that their college students are dating, whether they're swiping right or swiping left, this doesn't really give you a good opportunity to build those conversational
Yeah.
social skills, right? So maybe it's just a way to avoid having those conversations. But, I agree with you. I think, like the famous saying goes, right? I mean, people always remember how you made them feel.
Yes.
And so, so are there uncomfortable situations when things aren't working out? Sure. Of course, that's going to be uncomfortable, but, life is long and, you really never know where and when you could potentially run into this other college student down the line. And I
Yeah.
think, even if it's an uncomfortable situation, I think it's much better showing up in that space to say, hey, things aren't working out. This is what I'm seeing. And then it becomes really a learning opportunity for both of you. And I think people remember that. And it's okay if it didn't work out, but at least they'll remember the way that you treated them.
And I'll jump in for another point, which is, let's imagine that they did ghost, and they're not feeling good about themselves. Like, that's not who I want to be. I don't want to be that person. You
Mm.
can come back later and apologize.
Sure.
You can reach out to that person to say, you know what, I didn't handle this well. I'm so sorry. I was immature. I was stupid. I did those things. I am really sorry. I didn't handle it better. Like, if you didn't do it perfect the first time, you have a second chance.
Yeah, listen, that's a great point too. It's never too late to say I'm sorry about something
Yeah.
that you did, and I think that shows a lot of maturity that you're able to kind of revisit that and say, you know what, that's not the way that I wanted to show up there. Let's change the outcome, and you
Yeah.
can. That's the beautiful thing about life. You can go back and revisit those things. The other, thing that I think is kind of topical is that after this pandemic that we've all been through, it seems like many of us have just kind of lost relationships because of the isolation that we were all experiencing at that time. Maybe even politics. That's another piece here that have driven us away from other people who maybe at one point had a really special place in our lives, but they're no longer there because maybe we disagree with them politically. Who knows? So the question for you is, do you think that we should reconnect? And if so, how do we go about doing that?
Well, to answer your first question of the should you reconnect, I think that is something for each of us to assess. And imagine you've lost touch with a friend. You were friends with them freshman year, sophomore year. Your lives move, whatever. You don't see them.
Mhm.
If the person mattered to you, like, that's really where the question begins. Like, if the person mattered, if you cared, if there was something that you had and life circumstances caused a rift, it's an opportunity to say, I've missed you.
Mm.
I've missed you. I would love to reconnect. Can we have coffee? Can we do that? I think about how you would feel. I mean, if someone did that. I've had rifts in my life that have been many, many more years, and I still think of certain people in my life and, the sadness of the rift. I just recently had somebody reach out to me. I haven't talked to her in 20 years. I was thrilled to get the message, really thrilled. So, imagine both sides of it. So while, again, it can be as simple as, I've missed you. I mean, it doesn't really have to be more complex. I've missed you. How are you? Can we reconnect?
Mm.
And but the grounding question is, if the person matters to you, if they did matter,
Yeah.
then find them again. Because to find those gems of people that have mattered, it's worth holding on to. You're going to meet a lot of people in your life that, whatever, they come, they go, you don't care. But there are those keepers. You want to hunt them down.
Yeah. Really well said. I like that a lot. And it's, I think, a good way to leave the conversation there. All right. So, if our listeners, if they want to connect with you, perhaps for speaking opportunities on their college campus, maybe some coaching opportunities, to pick up your book, where should they go?
I would say the best place is my website, kimdeyoung.com. They can access, I've got a link for coaching, a link for speaking. There's a link for the book. It's all there. If they want to just take in some of the information I share, just quick social media, best place is Instagram.
Mhm.
And there's a link there from the Kim DeYoung website, easy to find me. But I have lots of content, and I love, as you probably can tell, could talk about choice and the things that people are navigating all day long. I mean, it is just such a thrilling topic. And I think for students, imagine them. They've had their parents involved with their choices up until they leave for school. So they're kind of new to it. They're nervous. They may not have the experience. They're stepping into a world where they're making personal choices, professional choices, relationship choices, and they've never really done it before. And they're nervous. Like, there's a lot going on for them. It's a big time. And I think it's a thrilling and exciting time. And for students and young, I call them emerging adults, to really understand that they can take agency of their choices and that they have control and they can be intentional. It's just so powerful. And I hope that they know that for themselves.
That's fantastic. All right. The book is called The Book of Choice, and you can go and check that out. Go to Kim's website, and Kim spells her name KIMDEYOUNG.com. Go and check out the website, contact her for speaking opportunities, coaching, get the book. I think it's fantastic. And it's just very timely for college students that are really struggling to make these choices that we've talked about here today. This will enable them to make some better choices. And so I really appreciate the work that you've done. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you. This was
All
a
right.
pleasure. Thank you so much.
Our pleasure. And to our listening audience, if you enjoyed this conversation with Kim, make sure you like it on social media. Make sure you share it with other students. Other students need to go and check out her book as well. So share that on social media. And we hope to see you on another episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.